Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is fix. And this is a verb that I've recently discussed with a group of students. So I'm going to begin my discussion by just talking a little bit about the pronunciation of this verb. The letter X in English can be very tricky. And in this word, the letter X is making two sounds. It's making a K and then an S sound. Fix. Fix. I hope you can hear that. That'll be important when we look at some of our pronunciation rules for forming other parts of our verb. But now let's take a look at some of the ways that we can use the verb fix. And first, I just want to note there are so many different ways to use this verb. You can see 8 definitions in my notes here. We're also going to be discussing some phrasal verbs as this video goes along. So let's begin by saying that one way people use the verb fix is to talk about fastening or securing something, right? So this can be done with tools, could even possibly be done with glue, but you might think of kind of attaching something in a very secure way. A second way the verb fix gets used is done many times with our eyes, our mind, or our attention, right? And we're directing our eyes, our mind, or our attention on someone or something. A third way the verb fix gets used is to mean to decide on something. And the way you might hear it be used is we have fixed a date for this event, right? So which means kind of like we've selected or picked a date. This verb fix gets used when people select dates, times, prices, places, maybe even a plan like next steps. A fourth way the verb fix gets used is to mean to mend or repair something. So this could be if something is broken or it's not working well, we can use this verb to describe that process of returning it to its original working condition. A fifth way the verb fix gets used is to talk about our appearance. And so my definition here says to tidy one's appearance, right? So kind of make cleaner, make nicer. You might hear people talk about, I've got to fix my hair, right? People will use it with makeup and clothes as well. A sixth way to use the verb fix is to mean to be planning or anticipating to doing something. So this sixth way is not something you hear used really frequently throughout the United States. I would say it is a little more common in southern states. I live in the Midwest, so this is not something I hear often. But again, in certain places within the United States, you might hear people say, I'm fixing to have lunch. I'm fixing to study, right? And so what they're indicating really is sort of future. They're planning on doing this action or this activity. So again, the sound sometimes gets even shortened from fixing to fixin' to. Okay. A seventh way the verb fix gets used is to mean to influence the outcome by illegal means. So this definition is going to be most connected to gambling. So there are many instances where players or teams, officials have been paid so that there will be a certain outcome. And so we would describe that situation as the game has been fixed. Right? It has been influenced most of the time. That's done with money. Now, an eighth way you might hear fix get used is in connection to animals. And so this is where an animal is either castrated or spayed, which those might be new words for you as well. But really what we're doing is preventing an animal from reproducing. So usually removal of sex organs to prevent them from having babies. you should know that fix is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all I need to do is add ing to form fixing. Now, some of my students who have great attention to detail always stop me when we talk about this verb in classes and say, wait a second, Katie, you always tell us if we have consonant, vowel, consonant, and it's one syllable, I need to double the consonant. And that rule works most of the time in English, but it does not work for words that end with the letter X. And I think this has to do because of the two sounds the X is making. So this is not going to require us to double it. We just never double X's. Okay? So I can add ing to form fixing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to be made by ed. And again, I'm not doubling the X. When I pronounce that past tense and participle form of the verb, I'm going to make a T sound. And the reason for this is my ending sound on the base verb is an S sound. Okay, so the past tense and participle sound should sound like this. Pardon. Fixed. Fixed. Okay, I hope you can hear a nice clear T sound on the end there. The reason for this, S is an unvoiced sound. My vocal cords don't vibrate, so I do not add an id sound. There's no extra syllable here. It's just fixed. Okay. Now, I promised you some phrasal verbs, so let's begin looking at some of those. The first phrasal verb you might encounter is fix for. And generally, this phrasal verb is going to be used in connection to food and preparing a particular dish or some food for a particular meal. So an example of this might be, what are you fixing for breakfast this morning? Right? So what are you making? What are you preparing? That's something you might encounter. What are you fixing for breakfast is an example of the present progressive. Right? So maybe if you're watching this video in the morning, that will make sense, right? During kind of breakfast time. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to fix on. This can mean to focus something on someone or some other thing. An example of this might be, the camera was fixed on the tearful cheerleader on the sidelines. Okay, so this is an example of passive voice. It's in the simple past tense, right? So I'm noticing, right, that camera is what is being focused on the cheerleader. Okay. Another phrasal verb we're going to discuss, or another meaning, I should say, to fix on or fix upon, is to mean to become fixated, which is really like too focused on someone or something, almost to the point where you're kind of obsessing. You can't think about anything else. An example of this, everyone else's gaze is fixed on their phones. Okay, another passive voice sentence here. Okay, also in the simple past tense, right? And this is something that I think we see quite often, right? Where people just aren't paying attention to other things, right? They're concentrating solely on that cell phone. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is a third way to use fix on or fix onto. And that means many times to stick or fasten something onto another object. An example of this, fix the address labels, fix the return address labels onto these invitations. Right? So maybe you've received these in the mail, right? Things that have your name and address on them. And when you go to mail something, right, that's the return address label, right? Usually sticky substance. You can always handwrite it on, but it's much faster, right? So we're going to stick it to the envelope. That's an example of an imperative sentence there. I'm giving a command, telling someone to do this particular action. Let's move on and continue discussing a few more phrasal verbs. The next one we'll discuss is to fix up. This can have a few different meanings. One would be to repair something or refurbish it, make it into a better condition. An example of this: we're going to fix up the old cabin this fall, right? So maybe this is something that's been in the family, but it's not in good condition, right? This really means they're going to improve it, make repairs, make it into a better condition. We're going to fix up is an example of the simple future using be going to. A second way you can use fix up is to mean to arrange a date for two people. An example of this: the couple was fixed up and they've been happily married for 10 years now. Right? So this is where maybe one person knows of two people they think, they would be a good match, right? That's the idea here. So when I was younger, I had co-workers, I think, try and fix me up, arrange a date. I know I had a family member or two, some friends. Sometimes that's a good way to meet people. Sometimes it's not very good. A third way fix up gets used is just to mean to arrange or provide something for another person. An example of this: the community is fixing up lodging for the volunteer group this week. Okay. We see this a lot in various communities where groups might take time over spring breaks, summer breaks, other periods of the year, and travel to another place and volunteer. Here, maybe we have some other community members. They're so appreciating the help that's coming to town. They're going to make arrangements so that all of these volunteers have a place to sleep. The community is fixing up lodging is an example of the present progressive or present continuous. Let's move on to our last phrasal verb. That's going to be fix with. This can also have a couple meanings. One would be to attempt to repair a relationship with someone. Another way to say that would be to make amends. An example of this: can he fix things with her? Right? So this is again kind of not a physical repair, but many times kind of a mental or emotional. Right? So perhaps this person did something very bad, said something very bad, and now, right, they're trying to apologize and many times indicate this will never happen again. This can happen with friends. It can happen with romantic relationships. It could even happen with a professional relationship where some kind of thing happens so bad that the overall working relationship is really damaged. A second way you hear fix with used is to mean to get someone's agreement or permission to do something. An example of this: we'll fix it with our boss to get next Monday off. Okay, so here, we'll fix it with is an example of the simple future, right? This might be a person trying to make a promise. I know I can get our boss to agree to allow us to have that day off. Now, let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb fix. And the first word we're going to discuss is just the noun form of this word. It has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. Just like our verb, this noun can have a number of different meanings. I think we're going to talk about 4 of them today. The first way you might hear the noun fix used is to talk about a difficult or awkward situation that you really don't feel like you can get out of. You don't know how to make it better. An example of this might be, we're in a real fix and need some help. Right? So if you ever have somebody telling you we're in a fix, right? No, probably not a good thing, right? They're many times seeking help or support to try and make things better. Now, a second and a bit more of kind of a slang usage of this noun fix is to refer to like a dose of drugs for a person who happens to be addicted to drugs. An example of this, he can barely go a few hours without a fix, right? So here we might be talking about someone who has a very serious addiction problem, right? And they right, the nature of the word addict, right? They're craving whatever it is that they have this connection to, and that's the usage there. I hope that isn't something you're encountering very often, because that's a difficult situation to observe and witness. A third way the noun fix gets used is to talk about a solution, a remedy that corrects or resolves some type of problem or mistake. An example of how you might hear this used. Oh, this is going to be a quick fix, right? So they're going to say, we can solve this quickly. That's a really common phrase to hear, quick fix. And a fourth way the noun fix gets used is connecting back to one of those earlier definitions of the verb where we talked about gambling and influencing the outcome of something. So any kind of dishonest or underhanded arrangement. An example of this. That outcome was a fix. Right, so again, I feel like you might hear this used in connection with sports and other events, maybe card games occasionally, where there is gambling involved. I've got a couple more related words for us to talk about. The next is the adjective fixed. Right? And I know we talked about this earlier, said this is the past tense and participle form, but it can also be an adjective. When I use this word as an adjective, I might be describing something that is fastened or connected securely in a set position. An example of this. There is an outdoor fixed ladder to the roof. Right? So this is not a ladder that gets moved and from one place to another. It is connected to the building and to the roof. A second way the adjective fixed gets used is to mean something is set and it's not subject to change or it's not able to be changed. An example of how you might hear this used. She's been on a fixed income for years. Many times we use this phrase, fixed income, to talk about retirees or maybe individuals who receive disability payments. So the amount of income they're receiving from a pension, from Social Security, our government support programs here, they don't really change. Maybe a little bit with the cost of living, but it is very consistent month to month, and they're not in a place where they can get another job and have more income. So that's the idea. The amount of money that's coming in each month is pretty much set. It's not going to change. A third way we use the adjective fixed is to describe sort of that predetermined outcome that's rather dishonest. So remember, we've talked about arranging something so that we lead to a desired income. So an example of this. The fixed match was discovered by unusual betting patterns. You still will read charges of this occurring in various sports, professional and amateur, sometimes. But again, that idea of there's been sort of an arrangement, an agreement, and much of the time that's all going to come back to money. I've got one more related word that I think you might encounter, and that's the adjective fixable. Notice on this word, I've added the suffix able, right? Which I hope you recognize as the word able, right? We can always take that suffix and kind of connect it back to our root word. So something that is fixable is able to be fixed or able to be repaired or resolved. An example of this is climate change a fixable problem, right? This is a question many people are asking. Some would say yes, we just have to do a lot better with our actions, our daily behaviors in order to repair the damage we've been causing to our environment. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.